Hi there. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Beyond the Frame. I'm your host, Joe Parente, and I've learned some of my most valuable life lessons from my favorite TV shows and movies. Sure, these works of art entertain us, offer us an escape, and even tap into our emotions. But Ryan, there's one E that's often overlooked.
Is that educational? I'm not sure.
It is indeed.
If viewed from a different perspective, these stories and their characters can help us to learn and develop as human beings. I'm your co-host, Ryan Vanderhei, and it's our mission with this podcast to help share these unique perspectives with you so that hopefully you can grow from the show.
Today's topic, the film Babygirl, written and directed by Helena Rain. As always, there will be a veritable bounty of spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution. And be sure to leave us a like, rating, or review wherever it is that you listen or watch, as it really helps us grow the show. So Ryan, shall we begin?
We shall.
Let's do it.
The answers that you're looking for are lying just beyond the frame.
So Ryan, here's my burning question. Is there a danger in fantasizing, in daydreaming? We all do it, right? We do it all the time. How could that be harmful? How could that mess up our lives at all? Can too much fantasizing get us in trouble? I really, is there a difference between fantasizing and using one's imagination? That's something I definitely want to delve into. So these are questions that burn in the hearts of men, or at least these two men, for the next 35 minutes or so. And these are the things that I thought of from watching Babygirl. As some of you might know out there, we do not do this as a movie review. We're talking about the emotional elements of these movies or shows. We're talking about what moves us. We're talking about things that we can learn about ourselves. And so Ryan and I are really looking for what hit us? What could we connect with? What could we relate to?
Yeah.
And if there are things that are completely new to us, it's like, can we put ourselves in those shoes and walk in them and kind of ponder, how would I handle that situation? What would I do? So, Babygirl was quite a watch.
It was quite a watch. It definitely was.
Yeah.
I want to come back to what you said earlier. I like the way you put that. Is there difference between fantasizing and one's imagination?
And using one's imagination.
I think that's an important question.
I completely agree, and I look forward to talking about that. So before we dive into specific scenes and explore these questions, I just want to give a brief overview of the movie. And again, if you don't want spoilers, I recommend watching the movie before listening to us or watching us, just saying. So you have been so fairly warned. So the opening scene starts just with the audible.
It does.
Yeah. And if you have seen the movie, you understand why Ryan just reacted the way he does. We hear a woman and a man making sounds that one might associate with a good time. And that would be a naked good time.
Yes.
And then we get the visual confirmation that, yes, they are indeed doing the laundry. No, they are having sex. So we see them and we hear the conclusion of said act. The man seems pretty darn happy with the ending, if you will.
Had a good time.
With her, it's a little harder to tell. We're watching her face. What's going on with her? He tells her he loves her, and he falls happily asleep. She eventually says that she loves him while maintaining a faraway look in her eye. At least I thought it was a faraway look in her eye. Like, what is going on there?
No, I think it was purposeful, and I think Nicole Kidman played
completely agree.
Very well.
I haven't even gotten into who these people are yet. But he's right. Ryan's right. It was Nicole Kidman. So eventually she gets out of bed and walks down the hall. She's actually not just walking. She's got a mission. She heads for, I was wondering, is she going to go to the fridge? Is this a post-coital snack? Sure. Is it a nightcap perhaps? Why is she in such a hurry? Hopefully it wasn't just to check her Instagram feed.
Right.
Well, she goes to her laptop, but then she lays on the floor on her stomach. And I was like, what an unusual position to get in to like read your email or something.
To get on the computer, yeah.
Quite frankly, she did not have email in mind.
Yeah, email wasn't at the top.
No, it wasn't even at the bottom of the list. It wasn't on the list.
Yeah.
So she lays on.
You said she had a mission.
She sure did. She gets on her stomach and she opens up the laptop and she's got some porn going. And I can't remember exactly what was said, but there was some, domination thing going on there.
Yep.
And she finishes the job that her man could not or would not. We don't know yet.
Things didn't happen for her, so she had to go take care of it herself.
They didn't. Either way, exactly. So she had to bring it home, which she did. So we now know that she was faking her orgasm with her husband.
Yeah.
And we know that she really likes porn because you could tell that this was a key part of her, as I said, bringing it home.
Hell of an opening scene.
Hell of an opening scene.
I mean, that's the movie. That's like, boom.
Yeah.
We're in it. We're here.
I like that. It's like merging onto the freeway going almost faster than the cars that are on the freeway.
Right,
It's just like you are moving.
You are in it. Yep.
So thus begins the story of Romy. Played fearlessly by Nicole Kidman. Then we see her the next morning, and she's made breakfast for the fam, including her hubby, who I thought was played beautifully and with nuance by Antonio Banderas. And she's made lunches for the kids and even written them notes. We also learn that she's the CEO of a robotic company. With a bright future, or at least one that's getting a lot of attention, that's for sure. So we can conclude she's a modern, powerful woman with a serious freaking bug in her software, is the way that I'm putting it.
I like that.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. There's just a little bit more to tell about the movie, kind of in a broad stroke, before we explore those questions a little bit more and get into scenes.
Okay.
So after that breakfast, she's on her way to work and she's walking up to the building and she comes across up ahead a dog attacking a man.
Yes.
Then the dog, and there are people around. This is on the streets in New York City. There are people around. Then the dog stops attacking him and turns and sprints towards Nicole Kidman. And she's about to become a Scooby snack when someone whistles and calls the dog off. And the dog stops in its tracks just before it's going to, who knows what, to Nicole Kidman, and turns around. And this young man like pets it. And it's like, whoa.
Gives it a couple of treats.
Yeah, exactly. The dog obeyed that guy like it had been waiting all its life for his command. That's the way it looked to me, you know? And this pretends perfectly to the next hour and 35 minutes of the movie because she was also waiting to be commanded.
Yep.
In a big way.
Perfect setup.
In a big way.
It's a good setup scene.
So I'm just going to tell a little bit more of that. It turns out that this man who called off the dog, this young guy, is an intern at Romy's company. And the intern, we'll call him Samuel the intern because that was his name. Yeah. Not Samuel the intern, but that's what I'm going to call him. He was played, I thought, remarkably well by Harris Dickinson, who did also just a killer American accent.
Agreed.
And isn't it a small freaking world that he saves her from being mauled, and he's also
an intern at the company,
starting
starting his first day that
exactly.
day. Yeah.
So the first time that they meet, let me back up a little bit, Ryan. I want to ask you a question.
Okay. In the context of this movie, I'm
in
scared where this is going.
In the context of this movie, did you find anything about the theme? Did you find any scene in particular? Did you find anything in there that connected with you or that kind of pushed any buttons for you personally? I know it's a very personal question, you know?
Yeah, I mean, this is a personal movie by all means.
It is a very personal movie. It's
someone who's struggling with sort of, like you said, fantasy and the dynamic. I think that there are certain things that I can relate to this film a little bit in small ways, not in a broad sense of like the overarching theme here and like how deep these characters go into it. But I think that how do I even I don't know how to.
Would it help if you knew your mother was not listening to this?
Yeah, it would help if I knew no one was listening to it.
I totally get it. It's Brian. Ryan. Excuse me. I don't want to make you completely, squirm.
Yeah, I don't know
So-
what I could say and not say. So
Well, how about we come back to that? We'll put a lid on that one.
Pin in that.
We'll put a pin in that for
Let
now.
me simmer a bit.
We'll put a
for
pin in
while.
it because I will divulge a little personally,
And maybe
about
that'll
this.
help me.
Exactly. That'll give you some
Yeah,
encouragement.
you open up the runway.
I'll do that to a degree.
Yeah.
So, just giving a little bit more context, this intern, Samuel the intern, chooses Romy to be his mentor.
Right. They choose somebody from the company.
Exactly.
He chooses her, and she's kind of like, I don't do that.
Exactly. So I will just say that this kid shows major chutzpah. Major chutzpah. To say the things he did to a coworker would be something. To say that to the CEO of the company that you just got this
The
intern.
most powerful woman in the
Yeah.
in the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woof. So not only does he show chutzpah, but she really likes it.
Yeah, we can see on her face how it affects her.
Exactly. And just, again, putting it in broad strokes, they begin I think it's fair to say, a torrid affair.
That's very fair.
Thank you. So Romy then prioritizes this affair over her family.
Yeah.
She goes, her husband, the Antonio Banderas character, Jacob, is director of, looks like either Broadway or off-Broadway play, probably
Yep.
off-Broadway play, but, in a big theater.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like there was an opening night celebration backstage.
Yeah.
She's there for approximately 38 seconds, can't get herself away from her phone, and runs out because she's going to have a rendezvous with Samuel the intern.
Yes.
She then, one night she said she's going to be working late. So, she wants her husband to remind one of her daughters she has a soccer game in the morning. So she's going to be missing more and more stuff
Right.
of, her family, these family activities.
And gets away with it so far because work's a good excuse. She's the CEO of a company, so nobody really
Exactly.
bats an eye.
They don't.
Mom just has to work a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So she does have the perfect cover.
Yeah.
And she'll do anything that Samuel the intern tells her to. And she loves that.
Yeah, she gets a rush out of it.
Yep. So for her, it's exciting and complicated. And it does affect the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Romy can't keep it, and that's Nicole Kidman's character, she cannot keep it compartmentalized.
Yeah, it starts to bleed
it
into
absolutely starts to bleed into the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it turns her world upside down. But in other ways, it brought what was in her mind, the things she always wanted, but she was ashamed of and didn't know how to ask her husband to do, into the light.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the more positive things that came of that. So I want to go back to the question that I posed at the start of the show and say, is there a danger in fantasizing? And danger might be kind of a strong word.
Sure.
Let me put it this way. Can fantasizing mess up our lives? So I asked them because clearly Romy has done a lot of fantasizing in her life. And Samuel the intern is like the absolute personification, the male embodiment of what she has been fantasizing about.
Yeah. We know that from the porn.
For sure. So my answer to those questions was a definite yes. So let me explain.
Please
Okay?
explain, Jeff.
All right. This comes from personal experience. This comes from really taking a hard look at this dynamic of fantasizing, daydreaming versus using one's imagination, and seeing what kind of effect it had on my life.
Okay.
And you can apply that to for Romy's instance. There's very much a sexual association.
Yeah.
With her fantasizing
In this scenario, yep.
but I mean this like in a really broad sense.
just
Okay.
in general
Yeah.
fantasy and imagination.
It's going to be more because there is such a strong emotional element to the sexual fantasizing. It's going to have deeper hooks.
Sure.
But I just kind of want to lay this out.
Yeah.
See what you think.
Yeah.
Bounce
lay
it
it out
off
there,
you.
man. Let me see what you got.
So if you look at fantasizing versus using one's imagination, fantasies can be manipulated. In your head, you can create what you want.
Whatever scenario.
Yeah. An imagination is something that's spontaneous. It's not something that's manipulated. You come up with a really good idea for a scene you want to write. That's a different thing than creating some kind of scenario. The way I've looked at it is imagination just is, it's like it's free and it has like a flow to it. And it's like, whoa, that's a good idea. It has such a different flavor to it.
Stay there on it, yeah.
Then
Now-
some. Go ahead, please.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If I sit down and if I'm like, I want to write a scene about two characters, they meet in a diner, they're attracted to each other, et cetera, and I start kind of turning the wheels and the gears in my head and thinking about, am I fantasizing in creating this scenario between these two characters and writing it down, or am I using my imagination?
To me, that's actually both.
Both. Okay.
To me, I
So there
really
is a-
I love that scenario.
There is where a place
me-
where the two can meet.
Because to me that is fully a constructive activity
Okay.
that you're partaking in.
Yeah.
Like you're having this quote unquote fantasy, not dreaming about, what if I lived in this house and had all this money? You're thinking about something that you want to specifically create
Okay.
and thinking about what people might say. Once you start thinking about what people might say,
Yeah.
that's where your imagination is coming in.
Yeah.
You're not manipulating it. You're just trying to come up with it. Like,
Yeah.
what would they say?
Sure.
So in that kind of an instance, I think it leans more towards the imagination.
There is a bit of a blurred line in certain circumstances, I think, what we're getting at here, because I feel like I myself throughout my life am a vivid daydreamer. Like I've always fantasized about myself in certain situations and in certain scenarios. I mean, if you're an artist in the industry, film, entertainment, you've probably at some point or another fantasized about what your Oscar speech would be. That's just something like as an artist, as a director, as an actor, it's probably crossed your mind at some point. And I've spent a ton of time in fantasies of that nature. What would my talk show be like? Or if I was on a talk show, what would I say? If I was like talking about my film that made, like, these are just things that run through my mind constantly.
I hear you, and I still think that has a slightly different flavor. To me, that smacks me more of imagination. Maybe you'd be picturing exactly what you would be saying. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's exactly. It's 100%.
You have your speech worked out already.
Yeah, and
I really
and-
want you to get one then, because I want to hear this speech you've been working on for.
And
a
I can
while.
really become very emotional in these kinds of. I'm very good at painting a very vivid picture in my mind and feeling and stirring up the emotions that I might feel in that moment if that were to happen.
I hear you. I think what you're talking about to me is very constructive, and it's very much about like an end goal, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what you're talking about is kind of like aspirational.
Using it in a productive way.
Exactly.
So you can't really. I see your angle here. You can't really categorize it specifically as fantasy because there's not really anything negative that can come from me unless from that experience I then think I'm better than people and I deserve it and they don't and things like of that nature. Maybe then that in turn could be a negative effect.
For sure. Plus, I think, and this is just where I'm coming from, not a professional psychiatrist or psychologist, but you're not doing what Romy is doing is something that's also a physical act to reinforce what she's thinking about, what she's fantasizing about. So it almost like adds an element of reality to it.
And I think there's a difference between fantasizing and then living that fantasy out, which is
True.
obviously what she does here. Like, she's fantasizing about these things. She's watching the porn that reinforces that.
That's right.
And maybe for, I mean, who knows how long, we only see her for this period of time in her life. That could have been years where porn was the sort of outlet.
That was the assumption that I actually made.
Yeah, because she's so, it seemed so procedural for her.
For sure.
Oh, I do this. We have sex. I fake my orgasm, and then I go down the hall and
That's
get on the
right.
computer. And it was like access right away, right to a video. But there was no.
Very true.
Yeah, it was very methodical.
Very true. Also, there were clues throughout the movie that this has been going on for her for a very long time. One of the things she says to her husband is, "I was born with this. I was born with these thoughts.
Right.
They didn't come from a broken childhood or anything else."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want to just, so here's the point that I'm getting at. Here's where I feel like it can really have an effect on someone's life. And then we're going to do the bad guy break.
All right.
The more and more attention you're paying to the thoughts in your head, the less present you are. It's almost as if you could say you're paying more attention to the movie in your head than what's out here.
100%.
And so we saw that Romy fantasized with porn, and studies show that porn actually can desensitize the brain's reward system, making it harder to experience pleasure from real life encounters.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah.
And so that's where, Romy wanted the stakes to be higher and higher and higher. She was getting fully desensitized.
It's not enough anymore.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
So people who are in their heads can easily go into shock. They're thinking more about, they're paying attention again to more of what's going on in their head than what's on the outside. So if they get bad news or something extreme happens, people who are really in their heads are going to more easily go into shock. First responders, police, firefighters, emergency room doctors cannot afford to go into shock, or people could die.
Yeah.
Those doctors, first responders, they're not in their heads. You could say they're in their bodies. They are ready to respond. They see the reality of what's going on and they can react.
Living completely in the moment.
Exactly. Whereas people who are in their heads are really incapable of that. And something I saw with the dynamic of the two of them was Romy uses fantasy, but Samuel was using his imagination, because when they had their encounters, he didn't know what he was going to do. It was spontaneous.
Yeah.
She was stuck in her head, and he's observing everything. He's observing people, and he can act spontaneously. To me, that was a guy who was really incredibly present. The way I started to see them was he was such a they were almost polar opposites. He was not stuck in his head. He was really observing. He's really looking. He's really looking.
Really present, yeah.
Yeah. And picking up on what people are doing. I mean, when he was first encountering her and, she said, "Do you always carry cookies?" And he said, "Yeah." "Wow, you want one?"
Yeah.
You know?
There's an understanding of human behavior because you're paying so much attention to it.
Exactly.
He could
You're
read
not stuck in the movies in
her
your
face.
head.
He could read her
Exactly.
body language.
Exactly.
Because he's there and he's not here.
Correct. So we're going to dig into this a little bit more with specific scenes. But first, it's time for the bad guy break.
Let's do it.
So,
Got me last time. Got me last time with the Pulp Fiction, which is really, that's eating away at me.
well, that's because I didn't give the obvious star.
I know,
of that.
yeah, that's
I
true.
had to.
That was smart.
I had to give the different one, or else you absolutely would have nailed it. And this isn't about, stumping you, although I do take some pleasure in that. So this particular movie, so that's our medium, is from 2002.
Okay.
It is, the genre is erotic thriller, dark romance. The star is Diane Lane.
Diane Lane, 2002, erotic thriller, romance. I don't know who Diane Lane is, so I guess that's a...
Well, then there we go. Then you probably have not seen
No,
Unfaithful.
Unfaithful?
Yeah.
No, never heard of it.
So fascinating movie.
Okay.
I thought. Diane Lane, has a husband, Richard Gere, who played by Richard Gere, and they have what
know that
looks
name.
like yes, you do, what looks like a good marriage. But
Okay.
this French guy comes along, and she's just kind of like, huh, and she just kind of goes with it, just cause, like out of curiosity. She wasn't looking for an affair. Things were good at home, but once she gets into that affair, watch out. And it had rather,
Starts to snowball.
oh boy, does it. And
Oh.
does it have a bleak ending?
Oh,
my goodness.
Okay, Unfaithful 2002. I'll have to
Yeah.
check that out.
Yeah.
See if that's streaming anywhere.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there you go.
Diane Lane.
Okay, so let's jump into a scene that I've already talked about once, but I want to reiterate it now that we've talked a little bit more about the fantasizing or being in the body. And that was that opening after the breakfast, after the next morning, at the very beginning of the movie when she's walking into work. First, let me back up. First, she's with the laptop and she finishes the deal. And so I thought, wow, that is someone who's really steeped in fantasizing.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see her with the dog charging her and she goes wide-eyed. She looks like someone who's going into shock.
Yeah.
And I just thought that woman is completely in her head.
Yeah.
Like does not have a good grasp on what's going on out here because she's so taken with what's in her head.
Right.
And again, Samuel was exactly the opposite. So does that, in the context I've talked about, does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. After we had that discussion, I've now, the gears are turning. Like now I'm understanding it a lot better. Like I see exactly the point that you're trying to make. And this scene is a perfect kind of
Isn't it?
representation
Exactly.
of that.
And it took me a while to see that he was like the counterpoint to that. Because I could see what was going on with her, but it took me a bit to go, wait a minute. He is the one who jumped right into action.
Yeah.
He sees it going for her and he takes action.
Yeah.
He does something to me.
knows
He's
what
like
to
a
do.
first responder. He's like an emergency room doctor. He doesn't go into shock like, oh my God, that dog is going to attack that woman.
Yeah, what do we do? No,
He-
was just
he
like,
steps
oh,
right
there's a
up.
dog.
Yeah, he steps right up.
Here's what needs to be done. Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating.
Very. It gives us our contrast between these two characters here and how their dynamic is going to play out over the rest of the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Very poignant.
yeah. So again, I just thought, wow, these are the signs of someone who is paying way more attention to what's going on
In their head.
instead of what's going
in
on
front of them.
out here.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my life when you're talking to people who get a faraway look in their eye, they didn't hear you. Another sign can be if like you touch someone and they like, they get startled.
Yeah, they're in
They're
their head.
really in their head.
Sure. Sure.
And being in your head can be a beautiful place to be. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing.
yeah.
I'm just saying that she, to me, personified that so well. And to me, that's part of what helped get her in trouble. So let's go with another scene.
Okay.
And I chose these scenes and then I watched the trailer on IMDb. I'm like, oh man.
They're all from
Not
the
all of them, but
trailer.
it made me look like all I did was watch the trailer. I didn't. I actually watched the movie, okay? I didn't just watch the trailer.
Yeah, 'cause
so
that cookie scene is in the trailer.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
But it was good.
It's a
It
good
was,
scene.
it was a great line too.
Yeah, yeah.
Made me laugh. He laughed too when he said it,
Yeah, he's like, sorry, that was incredibly inappropriate.
Yeah, which was outstanding because it
Yeah.
was. And I loved how he just said that was incredibly inappropriate. Like, he's just like, oh man.
He was having fun with it. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he did. Well, he had fun with it, and I had fun with it. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So Samuel has chosen Romy as his mentor, and she gives him what she says is going to be 7 minutes in that meeting.
Busy woman.
Yeah, busy.
Got
Busy.
stuff to
So
do.
much
Yep.
to do.
Don't have time for
Yeah,
this.
and her laptop's just down the hall if she needs it. But anyway, they meet in what looks like a storage room.
Yeah.
And he clocks that. And he said it's kind of strange to be in this room.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that because he's observant. He's not just focusing on her. He's taking in, to me, like he's taking everything in.
Yeah.
So he tells her that he thinks she likes to be told what to do. Right after she's about to tell him, she's like, I graduated from Yale. I did all this,
Yeah.
powerful woman. He's like,
Yeah.
powerful woman? I think you like to be told what to do.
Uh-huh.
And he laughs and says, sorry, I didn't mean to. And he goes, that. And that's where he said that was incredibly inappropriate. And I just, and to me, again, she looked shocked.
Yeah.
She went into shock again.
Yeah.
And he's laughing.
Now that we're talking about this, who do you think picked the place that
I think she did, absolutely.
And it's not a wonder that it was a
great
place
question.
That was just us talking about it. I was like, oh shit, maybe she picked that because it was like a closed off room that nobody could really access.
That's right.
There was no windows to like out into the rest of the company. It was really closed off. And so if he clocked that.
He did. And I love that he clocked that.
Yeah.
And I think that also reinforced that he thought, oh yeah, I've already gotten in there. I've gotten into her head.
I was right. My assumptions of you
exactly
were correct.
Because that is such a great question, because I wondered the same thing, but my immediate answer was she's the one who picked it. Part of why was like, okay, there was a scene before this that was not in the trailer. Okay. It's when they are the only two outside having a smoke.
Yeah.
They're on the balcony.
Yeah.
She's already out there. He comes out there.
Asks for light. He doesn't pay attention to her at all. Mm-hmm. They've already had 2 or 3 encounters. Mm-hmm. And it's before the scene that I just brought up, the 7-minute meeting. He looks down at the street. He walks around. Then he tells her that he's chosen her as her mentor. And she's like, I'm not in that program. No, you are in that program. You're on the list. I clicked your name. And then he just goes inside. Yeah, it's a matter of fact.
It's not like a young guy talking to the CEO at all.
It's a power move.
It is a total power move. So then when they have this meeting, the 7-minute meeting, and it's in a, again, it looks like a storage room or something.
Right.
He's thinking, oh yeah. I've spun my magic on. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So I thought that was a really,
that's a great scene.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
There were several choose. So let's dive into another one, shall we?
Let's get it going, man.
So this scene is where Romy's coming clean to her husband. Wow, what a scene that was.
Tough. Yeah, very tough.
And she tells him, I was born with these dark thoughts. I've tried therapy. I want to be normal.
Which we see throughout the film. We have these cuts to her doing the eye.
Exactly. So she does the...
I forget what it's called. Yeah, it's going to kill me. The eye
MDR.
Is
it MDR?
MDR?
I can't...
It's when you... The image...
Exactly.
You got to follow the light back
exactly.
and forth.
She does that.
Yeah.
She does cold plunge. Well, she also did Botox in that sequence, of the therapies that she's doing.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
EMDR. I forgot the E. So she tells him, I've tried therapy. I want to be normal. And I got to tell you, Ryan, when I saw the sequence of her therapies, which was fascinating because it was just like no dialogue, just watch her go through doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
I thought there is absolutely no way any of those are going to work, because she is constantly undermining herself by fantasizing about what she wants rather than expressing it to her husband.
Sure.
Rather than really admitting it to herself. Because we did see, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but come on, we're having a discussion about this. It's okay. When she did ask her husband the first time in the movie about, she said she wanted to have sex while watching porn.
Right.
She had the bed sheet over her.
Yeah, she couldn't
look at him.
Yeah.
So I just thought,
shame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she couldn't own what was going on with herself.
Yeah.
And she is still, I'm betting money I don't have, she's still fantasizing like all hell. So even if she does get some kind of progress with those therapies, to me, it's her daily habits that are completely nullifying any of those effects.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're putting, you're not pulling the root. You're
not
spraying the weed killer.
Exactly.
So you'll kill it. Bless you.
Thank you.
But it's going to grow back because you haven't pulled the root yet.
Absolutely true.
This is something deeper that these other kind of things that you're trying to throw at it are not going to work.
That's the way I see it.
Sure.
And this is our show, and damn it, it's okay for me to give my opinion.
Yeah, that's right. So now that we're talking about this, I'm actually figuring out how I relate to the film. Because previously, when we were talking about it, I was just thinking in the context of like the sexual nature.
Okay.
And their relationship and dynamic. But I'm realizing now that I relate to her character a lot in terms of how I live in my head too much sometimes as well. And I've gone to therapy for this, and there's something that's called catastrophizing.
Okay.
So when I live here, so then I'm visualizing, it's like, let's take the flying, for example.
Okay.
I struggle with flying. I can't fly. It's because I'm in my brain, I'm thinking of all the ways that things can go wrong. And I'm like playing it as a movie in my head. And then that's fueling anxiety.
Wow, that's exactly.
So as we started talking more and more about her character, I'm like, oh shit, I can relate completely. Not to hers is in regards to the sexual fantasies,
but the dynamic we're talking about.
But just that, yeah, how I live too much here and not enough here in the real world. And so part of my therapy, part of my process has been trying to do that, to live more here, focus on what's in front of me instead of
that's awesome
being here. So
Good
I'm
for
glad
you,
that
man.
we
Wow.
had this sort of circle back
Yeah.
to how I can relate
love
better
that.
to this.
Look at what movies can do for us.
This is what I'm saying.
I
man.
love this.
You know,
Yeah,
this
I
is
love
just what
this.
it's all about. Yeah.
I guess then that I'll give my a bit of my reveal of how I came to understand this dynamic.
Okay.
Was having a very long distance relationship.
Okay.
Someone who lived overseas.
And
And so there was very little reality to it. Couldn't
yeah,
didn't-
you're not there.
not
to
physical contact, you know, on the phone, texting, but it's not the same thing.
So the only thing you have is fantasy.
Pretty much.
When I'm with them next time, what will it be like? How will our
Absolutely.
dynamic be?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And there were large gaps of time, months would go by between the times that we could see each other.
Yeah.
And so the reality then of your time was like, it was confusing because it didn't match the movie I had in my head. And you'd kind of have to get to know each other again. And then by that time, she's gone.
Sure.
And I got to tell you, that messed with me.
Sure.
It
I can imagine.
really, really messed with me.
I can imagine.
And
Yeah.
and I just could see that and this went on for 4 years.
Wow.
And I was in my head
Okay.
for that long.
So it was really
in that particular sense. And
At what point did
boy,
you
did it mess me up.
realize? Was it only in hindsight later?
Oh yeah, when the wheels came off the cart,
Yeah.
so to speak. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when you kind of were like, oh,
It's when the relationship, because finally I said the long distance. I'm the one who broke it off.
Yeah.
Yet I'm the one who totally fell apart
yeah.
because I had all these movies built up in my head.
And it was never playing out that way.
Man, there wasn't a future, and
And that causes you to be disappointed.
Expectations weren't met.
Sure.
So disappointed,
Yeah.
yes.
You were
but
let
also,
down.
but also then dealing more with just the reality of my life and what's in front of me was like, oh, I didn't handle it well.
Sure.
And it was also during the pandemic when everyone's wheels were coming off their carts. So
And I had a long distance relationship during the pandemic too. I think a lot of us did.
yeah. So yeah, that was a rough time.
Sure.
For
Yeah,
a
same.
whole lot of us.
Yeah.
There's one last scene I want to touch on. We're going to make it pretty quickly.
Okay, let's do it.
So this is the scene where this comes after Romy has told Jacob, her husband, about what she's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob kicks her out of the house. She has another house to go to, which is nice.
Yeah, very.
You know, so she goes to the country house or maybe the Hamptons house, not sure. And then Samuel the intern turns up there almost magically.
And I love the way he turns up. He doesn't come in and how are you? What's going on? He's just randomly swimming in her pool.
Yep, exactly. And actually, he beat her there, I think, because she came there and he was already there in the pool.
I don't
No,
remember.
I can't
No,
remember.
I don't think so.
No, exactly. As soon as I said, I'm like, no, that is incorrect. But anyway, then her husband shows up, and he and Jacob, the intern, and Jacob have a fight.
Yeah, a little tussle.
And then it looks like Jacob is either having a heart attack. It turns out to be a panic attack.
Yeah.
Who calms him?
Samuel,
the intern.
yeah.
I got to tell you, I thought that was a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
An absolute stroke of genius, because first of all, I was really impressed by Jacob, the character Jacob, because he wanted to understand. Yeah, he wanted to pound that kid's face in, but he also wanted to understand what was going on.
Yeah, he loves this woman
exactly,
to pieces,
exactly.
His children, his wife.
And you know, Europeans tend to have a little bit more maturity than basic Americans, you know. So he's just like, hey, let's talk about this, and he gives his explanation of domination, and Samuel tells him that's an outdated, you know, mode of that's not really how it's going.
Right.
But then that's when Jacob has this panic attack.
Yeah.
And when Samuel put his forehead to Jacob's, I was like, God damn.
Yeah, that's a heavy
He's
scene.
good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He damn near seduced Jacob, you know?
Yeah.
A straight man who was trying to pummel this kid's face for having an affair with his wife.
I mean, they literally were just fighting each other, and now they're forehead to forehead.
Yeah. And I didn't even get to touch on, because we didn't have time, the scene when Jacob, you know, when Romy tells Jacob that he's really lovely and he has a real gift. Mm-hmm. And he said, sometimes I scare myself. Mm-hmm. Because he knows he has this gift for understanding what people need.
Oh, and Samuel.
Sorry, Samuel. Ah, my bad. Samuel has that gift of giving people, of understanding what they need.
And then, providing it.
That is profound.
That is.
And
that's
again,
huge.
you cannot be living in your head.
Right.
And do that. You've got to be so observant about the world and about people, and really be an empath.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to me, that kid had superpowers.
Super quick. The ending. She comes, Jacob comes around. They're back together.
Yep.
And they're, going to engage in a sexual act.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were going to talk about that next?
Exactly.
Let's just squeeze it in.
We're going to squeeze in how this ends.
Yeah.
So Jacob and Romy are back together, and they are having a sexual act. And they are recreating an act that Romy did with Samuel in a hotel room.
Yeah.
A really uncleanly. It was not a clean. Yeah, that was disgusting. The hair
off the bed. Oh.
Yeah, that was gross.
Yeah.
Anyway, they're recreating that.
Yes.
And we, the viewers, get to see what's going on in her head.
Yeah.
While her husband is doing his best to meet her in what she wants and what she's asking
meet her
for.
halfway. Yeah.
And what is it that she's thinking about? Well, she doesn't have the computer in front of her.
Nope, but she's got.
She's got Samuel the intern in her head.
Yeah, walking the dog around.
So, yeah, and so Jacob, if you will, brings it home, gets the job done, unlike the opening scene. But my question was, did he really?
Or was it...
or was she faking it again?
Or did he really, but because she was thinking about...
And that's the other thing. So it's either, did he actually bring it home? And by that, I mean, did she climax? And if she did, that's partially because she was fantasizing about Samuel the intern.
Yeah.
So it did look like she did reach climax, and it did look like that an important element of that was having that movie, if you will, playing in her head of Samuel the intern.
Yeah.
And so I thought, it's going to be a long road for these two. It's going to be a really, it was a sad ending. I think
until she can do that with Jacob without fantasizing.
Exactly.
That's the only
Exactly. And I would love to know if people saw that ending and thought, that is fantastic. Because I could see, if you're not looking at it this way through, with the fantasy being an issue, you might see that last scene and go, right on. Like she's like, they're making it work.
Right.
I am not one of those people.
No.
That is not
I was paying too close of attention to him walking that dog around that hotel room. Yeah.
that was, again, I thought it was a fantastic ending. I thought this was a really interesting movie.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really well played by all the leads.
Agreed.
And even Esther McGregor as
Ewan
the
McGregor's daughter, who did a fantastic job as the daughter.
Yeah, she was really good.
Loved the scene where she's smoking the cigarette under the stove.
Yeah, and mom comes over and takes a puff with her.
That
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was fantastic.
It's great.
So I was really taken by what this explored. I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was to me, an excellent example of the effect it can have if one is living in their head and they're not paying attention to what's going on out there in the real world, if you will.
Brilliantly put.
It can mess with them. It can upset their lives if they're not smart about it.
Agreed. This is one of those movies that had a lot of shock factor. So when I first stepped out of the theater, it needed time.
Yes.
And once I started processing it, and now that we've had this discussion, it's really grown on me. Like I think I really do like the film.
Right on.
Yeah.
Me too. So should I squeeze in our recommendations?
Let's get some recommendations.
So
here.
I'm not going to go over exactly why I'm recommending all these, but I just am, because if you like Babygirl, I think you might like some of these.
Yeah.
So Sanctuary, that's from 2023, starring Margaret Qualley and Christopher Abbott.
That movie.
It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Number 2, I couldn't resist it. Eyes Wide Shut from 1999 with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Great movie.
I dug it.
Yeah.
Bound, the Wachowskis from 96, Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly. I saw that when it came out, and
Bound.
I absolutely loved it. You got to check that out.
I got to see that, yeah.
Challengers from 24, starring Zendaya, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor.
Great movie.
And the last one I haven't seen yet, Night Bitch,
Okay.
starring Amy Adams. So
2024 as well. Okay.
I've heard good stuff about that.
Okay,
And I
cool.
think she is fantastic. So
Great Rex.
thanks, man. And just to wrap it up, I just want to say thank you so much to all you out there for joining us today. And remember, as always, you're the main character in your own life. So don't be afraid to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because sometimes the answers that you've been looking for are lying just beyond the frame. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.